Well, a priest in a small town, small rural town, was having some problems with his congregation, so he called the bishop and asked the bishop to come and speak on a Sunday. And the bishop arrived, and the bishop said, well, what's wrong? What can I do? And the priest said, well, my problem is that everybody in my congregation thinks they're perfect. And I need for you to make it clear what the reality is here. And so the bishop, you know, he was a well-renowned bishop, and he was a very eloquent speaker, and he knew the scripture, and so he got up that Sunday morning and he spoke for an hour, preached for an hour to the folks about the realities of life, and he was convinced that he had them clearly understood that they were sinners. And so at the end of his talk, his sermon, he said, now, is there anyone here who thinks they're perfect? And everybody sat there looking at the floor. And finally, one fellow in the back of the room stands up. And the bishop looks at him and said, so you think you're perfect? And the man said, well, no. He says, I'm not perfect, he said. I'm standing up in honor of my wife's first husband, whom she says is perfect. You know, it would appear that much of life is about our journey trying to be perfect. Do you hear that? Okay. That we're trying to be perfect in the sense that we want the perfect car, we want the perfect relationship, we want the perfect home, we want the perfect job. Have you ever heard yourself say, if I just had the perfect whatever it is, I would be perfect, or I'd be happy, I would be fulfilled, I would be, you know, whatever it is that shows up in terms of what our hopes, desires, and dreams are. And, you know, the part of the challenge is that this whole consciousness of moving towards perfection sits in the realm of us really trying to achieve self-acceptance. That what we really want is to accept ourselves. We really want to somehow feel good about ourselves. We really want to feel somehow that we have arrived, or that somehow there's a reason for us being, or that we've shown up. And so we must be perfect if we do accept ourselves, if we are finally to reach that point. Michael Beckwith, in his book Spiritual Liberation, says that no matter how many credentials, accolades, wall plaques, trophies you acquire, your jubilation will be cut short by a rude intruder, the ego's gossip that you aren't yet quite eligible for self-acceptance without just a little stronger sense of your self-importance. That if we're perfect, we understand that, you know, we've arrived, and therefore we can accept ourselves, however that might be. Now, I don't think that this accepting ourselves is giving up something. I think rather it's the reality of accepting ourselves, to me, is stepping into the awareness and the understanding and the consciousness that we have a general sense of appreciation for the miracle that we are right now, regardless of what else is going on in our life. In other words, that there's this sense of awareness of our innate goodness, and that we are already perfect. I had, last weekend, I was down at Moscow, and you're probably going to get tired of hearing my college stories of my kids, but nevertheless, they show up in my life. And so I went down, you know, Caroline's at the University of Idaho, and so I went down there last weekend, and it's their last soccer game was on Sunday, and so I went down Saturday, and it was homecoming. And so I went to the homecoming parade, which is in the downtown Moscow, and it was at 10 in the morning, and Caroline and her soccer team were going to be in the parade, you know, because it was part of the homecoming festivities and so on and so forth. And I hadn't been to one of these for a long, long time. And so I went to the parade, and I was standing there, I saw myself, you know, the band came down the street, and there was just, you know, thing after thing, and I was sitting there thinking, I was almost like I had this sort of big city, you know, do you know what I'm saying? It's like, this is really pretty, you know, like lame. kind of stuff, you know. This is like small town, you know. It's like, oh man, you know, and here comes the next band, and da da da. Oh, there's the tractor coming down the street. And there's all these farmers and people lined up on both sides of the street, you know, and I'm thinking, wow, what is this? Am I on another planet or something, you know? And then I realized, you know, that I was making this into something. You know, I was making it into something. And when I saw Caroline and her team come down the street, you could tell that she thought she was on another planet. I mean, literally, because, I mean, here's Caroline. She grew up in the city. You know, you know, when she was in band, you know, and they played if they went to a parade to play in, it was like Victoria, Canada, you know, so it'd be some kind of really big deal. Well, here we are in Moscow, Idaho, you know, and she's walking down the street, you know, and so I could tell that she was like struggling with this, and I thought, and I stopped for a moment, and I thought, well, this is perfect. This is exactly where we need to be. This is exactly what needs to happen. And once I did that, once I thought, okay, this is great. This is really, you know, it's like I shifted. It's like, boom, to the other side, and got into it. And it was a lot of fun. We had a great time, and I was giving Caroline a hard time. I said, this is small town America, Caroline. You have got your opportunity to really get into it and see what it's like, you know, because this is what's going on. This is a part of your experience of growing up, and it's how I grew up. I grew up in the midst of that, and all of a sudden it reminded me of all my stuff, you know, so that was great. So then that afternoon was the football game, right? So I went to the football game, and they have a good team this year, and so, you know, and I was sitting in the game, and I was sitting in the stands. Now, the stadium is a dome stadium there, so, and it's not a huge place, but it's big enough. And I was in the student side. I had a general admission ticket, so it's like you kind of sit over with the students, and there was all this energy. And you know, I tried to stay, you know, really open and kind of present and all that stuff. That's kind of one of my mantras, you know, to be open. But I was feeling assaulted by all this energy, and then the team wasn't doing very well the first part of the game. So between the team not doing well and feeling assaulted, I realized I couldn't stay there. That the only way I could stay there was to shut my chakras down, literally, in order to deal with the energy, all the student energy and the running up and down the thing and all this stuff, you know. So I left. And I got home. I was staying in Coeur d'Alene, so I got back up to Coeur d'Alene, and then I turned on the radio, and it turned out that they won in the last 30 seconds of the game. And I missed it. I missed it, and I thought, oh man, you know, I should have stayed. You know how you do it to yourself? I should have stayed. It would have been, my life would have been more perfect if I had stayed, you know. And then I thought for a moment, and I thought, well, no, because what I'm trying to do in my life is to be more aware of how things affect me and respond to them appropriately. And so I did exactly what I needed to do. It was perfect. Leaving the game. Well, the next day I got up and went back down to Moscow to see the soccer game. And so the first half of the soccer game, this is the last game of the year, they were playing University of Hawaii. First half of the game we were up 2-0. Well, soccer, that's like, you know, almost guaranteed that you're going to win the game, and I was getting really cocky, and so by the end of the game, we lost 3-2. And I was like, oh man, you know, so I left the game that we won, and I stayed for the game that we lost, you know. And so Caroline's coming across the field, you know. Well, what turned out is that because I was present, because I did not allow myself to be shut down the day before, I was present at that game for her. So I could be present and be a positive force in that moment, not to try to pave over what was going on, but just to be present with her. So that experience was perfect, wasn't it? And so isn't perfection a matter of perception? Isn't it how it is that we show up in a given circumstance in our life? Isn't it how we decide that something is going to be for us? And so this whole consciousness, this whole reality, this whole experience, this journey to perfection really is about perception.